Oh, hello and welcome to the post-match reaction to, the Blues versus the Highlanders in the Super Rugby Trans-Tasman final. And boy, oh boy, it was a tight affair in this one. Not a classic, though, cornflake for the ages, was it?
Second half was. I mean, if we want to split that game into the good and the bad and the ugly, the first half was certainly something I think most rugby fans probably from any part of the globe would probably want to forget in terms of a grand final sort of appearance. But hey, the second half was good, it was exciting, it was close, it was tight. And yeah, I guess over the full 80 minutes, you got to say the deserved winner probably come out on the other side with the Blues picking up the victory.
Yep, absolutely. But I did enjoy the Sky's graphics showing us that they were losing bonus points on offer for this game. So look, at least both teams had at least they would have got something out of it if they'd got within 7, but not quite there. I put a tweet out about that one. You put in our little in our sort of Facebook Messenger chat group that you're enjoying the nuclear takes on Twitter during the first half, and how Twitter was kicking off. I think if you were following Twitter, you might think that actually there weren't any players on the pitch; they were just referees, because that's all the comments were about in that first half. And what I think a lot of the second half, some of the comments were there as well. But I think the commentators were worse than the referees to me in this one, in calling this game. But there you go. Some good things to come out of this one then is that we had a 36,000. What's we're talking about? Gobbledygook. Oh, dearie me. 36k in the ground there. So it's a decent crowd.
Well, that's a grand final. You would hope so, wouldn't you? Especially now you're seeing around the rest of the globe, other countries starting to get their crowds back. You see the Euros happening over in Europe, obviously, and you see the American sports starting to get crowds back. We have probably been a little bit lackluster, a little bit complacent, I guess, with our competitions. We're a bit used to it now, but it's good to see the Aucklanders getting out there. And I think there's a lot of fans going up from down in the Otago region as well, getting up to that game. You saw quite a few Highlanders shirts in that crowd. So good involvement. Good to see good crowd there. And boy, we just need to keep on supporting these competitions and things like that as well. Keep the crowds up. It makes for a way better atmosphere, a way better match.
Yeah, and I'll get to you in a second. The commentators talking about how it was good that the Super Rugby franchise has been generous with ticket prices. It's like they're being generous with ticket prices because they can't sell any tickets. That's
I don't know. $60 a ticket is generous for a Highlanders game. Would you call that generous?
I don't know. Anyway, look, I think anything that's on there has any generosity by the Super Rugby franchises is because they can't sell the tickets. It's not them being generous. But anyway, good evening, Bella. I thought you were going to be at the game this evening.
No, I couldn't make it. Unfortunately, had to shoot down to Funga. But nonetheless, a very, very happy Blues fan. And I'm even more happier to see the Highlanders make the final, because if you recall, right at the top of the season, I did name them as my long shot. Close, but no cigar. And speaking of, crowds, attendance and finals, I reckon, it should be rent a crowd. If you can't sell it out, those last 10,000 tickets, just hand it out to the local grassroots clubs. I tell you what, the extended final, everyone's going to turn up and you're going to have full house. Pretty simple logic, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It should have been a sellout at the end of the day. It's disappointing they didn't get the 42,000, I think it is. That's the capacity for a rugby game at Eden Park without extended seating. So it should have been. We should have seen. There should have been more people there, even with the bad weather that we've had. Anyway, let's try and get on to actually another pre-match thing I want to talk about before we get into this. The Blues, and hopefully one of you guys can help me here with the cultural piece. I've forgotten the name of it now. But when the Blues played British and Irish Lions, they gave them a big long the Maori fighting stick. What's it called? As the prize for the game. The Highlanders gave them a broadsword, and yet it's the Highlanders.
Cool.
Yeah, that's cool. But why are the Highlanders doing the haka? They're not the Blues. Clearly, the Highlanders have got more Scottish heritage but and yet it's the Highlanders that are doing the haka at the beginning of the game.
Team culture, Paul. Team. Look at that. Look at how that team's made up. Who's the leaders in that team? Ash Dixon, Aaron Smith, co-captains, obviously, but leaders, culturally leaders. Those guys, that sort of Māori heritage is huge with them. So it's no surprise they come out. I guess the sword thing is a club sort of memento, isn't it? But that heritage, that's all down to Ash Dixon for mine. He's a leader in that team, and that's just his personality, his culture coming through, and his leadership in that team as well. And those boys would follow him to the ends of the world.
Yeah, no question. I think spot on there. The sport is pretty much a souvenir memento on behalf of the club. But as far as the haka, no question. Ash Dixon, 100th game. That's his kaupapa written all over. So, it was good. It was good. There's been a bit of chatter about this very same thing online. Lots of different people having lots of different opinions. I was talking to someone just a couple of minutes ago exactly this, who knew exactly what's going on. So, if you look at the leaders of that team, that's where it all revolves, and they're the ones leading that side of the whole culture. And it was good to see. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
I loved it. I thought it was just a bit funny how the Blues didn't do one, and yet they were the ones that in previous tours have had more of the culture thing going on. So it was, don't get me wrong. I think I was very happy having it at the beginning of the game. I wasn't saying that it shouldn't have happened. It was just sort of a bit amusing.
No, the Blues could have given them a pirate sword of some sort, maybe a replica of a pirate sword from the 1800s. Anyway.
They've lots of talk about this then, but Simon, congratulations, Blues win their first trophy since the Brisbane Tens. I'm not sure the Brisbane Tens really counts, to be honest with you, Simon. That's not really a trophy that I think many of us remember.
Mind you, Carlos Spencer played in the tournament as well, and I think he trained for something like three or 4 days. So it was a bit of a charity carnival rugby. So that doesn't really count as a trophy, quote unquote.
Yep. So let's just actually talk about a bit of the game. The Highlanders definitely started the better of the two teams. The Blues didn't. They didn't look like they settled into their game very well. And we had a kick out on the full. Passes were going to ground. But you must be happy with the kind of the start that the Highlanders did there for you, Cornflake.
Yeah, I mean, the two teams going into that first little quarter of the match, and the Highlanders had a clear game plan. And right from the start, they executed that game plan pretty well. They were going for territory. They were going to kick in their own half and look to play the game inside the Blues half. The Blues kind of went into that game kind of seeing how things were going to go. And they were just going to chance their arm on a few occasions, play a natural game and see what sort of way the game sort of played out. And that kind of counted against them, as the Highlanders were a lot more structured, a lot more fluid in the way they were playing as well. So the Blues, errors, poor passes, poor kicks, didn't really look like they had their heads wrapped on fairly well right from the start. But good start for the Highlanders, and taking their first shot at goal in the grand final of the competition. It's one way to get off the mark, isn't it?
That's the first penalty they've taken in the competition.
The first penalty of the competition, yep.
And in the end, all their points came from the boot. With no
try. This competition's Trans-Tasman, isn't it? I mean, what's that whole Trans-Tasman competition's been about? Bonus points. Getting the tries, getting the bonus points. Now it's going back to Aotearoa, isn't it? Where penalties were a lot more, important, because games were decided by 2-3 points, not 2-3 tries.
You have that, but then Boa, you talk about that they did, but then when the Blues got an opportunity to go for a penalty, they go to the corner, and Parry Parkinson comes straight through and disrupts the ruck. So like more. So some strange decision making early on by the Blues.
Yeah, look, absolutely. It could have eventually cost them, but it didn't. And Conflict rightly says, we're back to Super Rugby Aotearoa, where things are tight. There's hardly much difference amongst the team. But I have to say, we did miss the Crusaders in this final, didn't we? It wasn't quite the same sort of vibe. And it was close quarters, trench warfare. Both teams, they played it as if it was a final. And I have to say, yes, Paul, very surprised by turning down the points or shooting for goal. Highlanders certainly had the better of the early exchanges. The primary reason being that service, the speed of service from the ruck was lightning fast from Aaron Smith, whereas that wasn't the case with Christie for the Blues. Soon as that was changed, we saw what happened when Jonathan Ruru came on board. Highlanders, look, they did have the better of the early exchanges. They certainly landed the punches. The difference was that the Blues, I thought, were a bit lucky, particularly in that first 20. They got away with a few line speed calls, for a better choice of words, and they shut down that Highlanders attack. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Good to see that both teams treated the final with a bit of respect as far as the tightness and not wanting to do anything too out of the ordinary, unlike chasing 8, 12, 16 tries. But I have to say, I feel for the Highlanders.
The Highlanders started well, but then basically we obviously had the yellow card for Dixon, who for the high tackle on a Terry Black. By the letter of the protocols, could it have been read? Yes, it could have been. Looking at how the referees have been calling it in Super Rugby Trans-Tasman, then yellow, I think, was probably expected. Maybe even they would try to downgrade it because he did properly wrap both arms, but it was still high anyway. So we had that yellow card for Dixon. I say unsurprising considering the way it's been called in this tournament. So it's consistent from that point of view from the referees. HIA for Terry Black, but luckily he came back on. But he didn't. When he came back on, he definitely didn't look the same player as he had when he went off. And whilst the Blues were dominating possession, I think at that point, well, in the end, it was 7 clean breaks to 0, and the Blues had 67% possession that first half. It really was all one-way traffic, but they just weren't finishing. And even the penalty, even the try they did get was from a crossfield kick, not from a break. Which I think Christie was a big part of that, wasn't he? Not getting to that ruck, the support players not getting there. So you make a break, you have a ruck, you take time. The Highlanders defence resets, and off you go all over again. And it's so I think the Blues doing the good initial work, but not actually finishing it was my big thing from that first half.
I think the Blues, they were controlling their part of the game, the whole game really. But I think what the commentary was also saying was fairly true as well, that both teams were very good defensively, structurally, and the Highlanders, like you say, are getting that time to reset after the breaks, and they were scrambling pretty well, like the Highlanders do when they get under a bit of trouble. Guys cover very, very well into the corners and kind of cut off lines and do that very, very well. I think the turning point in that first half was not the Ash Dixon yellow card as much as I think the Highlanders contained that very, very well. If not, they probably were better during that 10-minute period. But the big turning point for me was that injury to Siati Tokalahi. And they kept him on for such a long time after as well. I was surprised they took off Ethan de Groot before they took off Tokalahi. And you could tell the scrum massively underpowered because of, the 10 rolls of bandage that were around his leg. That certainly took away something from his scrummaging ability. So I think that was a big turning point. The Blues scrum dominated from there. And I think, for me, he should have been off pretty much straight away. Bring on that replacement, I think, could have stemmed the flow a bit of that second half of the first half for the Blues. But that was a big turning point for me.
Yeah, I think, look, down in Dunedin, apparently we're having phone calls from all of the pharmacies that they've run out of tape because the amount of tape on those guys' knees was nuts. They were being held together by tape. Some poor decisions there, as you say, with the substitutions, those two props, unfortunately.
And also, just like that, with to what Cornflake was stating, one of the key things for me, the Highlanders didn't attack enough right on the edge. By that I mean, the space between the touchline and the 5-meter line. That's where they've been really effective. And of course, there's a few kicks where Jonah Nareki tried his chip and chase. It didn't quite come off. whereas in previous encounters we've seen how good that has worked for him. So there's a few things, the rub of the green, call it what you may, didn't quite go their way. And my opinion, I felt that the Highlanders didn't utilize that quick ball, where they could have really transferred it out wide and attacked those tram lines where they've traditionally been very, very effective. And also, if I can come back to that Ash Dixon high shot, look, under the current high tackle framework, guys, and look, I am a little bit of an expert on this because I've studied this day in, day out for the last 4 years. Dead set red card under the rules. I'm so pleased it wasn't. But again, we can't have one way to referee Super Rugby Aotearoa and Trans Tasman as opposed to how the Six Nations or the Rugby Championship is going to. It's got to be consistent. And the bottom line is Ash Dixon, he showed tremendous tackle technique prior to that, where he was actually bending at his knees, going nice and low, and absolutely nailed a few of the Blues. But for some reason, that old habit came back. So this is something we're going to have to keep an eye on, because rolling on to the games against the Wallabies now, seeing Lockie Swinton's come off the hook, we are going to see more and more of this, and the dreaded red card is going to play a big role. So something we need to be aware of. Hopefully the coaches and players are listening to this, they're watching this, and they can adjust and adapt.
I think it's going to be something we're not going to see really dealt with until November, when we have the Southern Hemisphere nations going up north and with northern referees. And I don't think we're going to see it so much with COVID and the less travel of international referees during this window. But anyway, that's a topic for another night as to when we'll see it sorted out. But I think we're going to have this problem for a while yet. We should talk about refereeing though in that first half. So we had Ash Dixon. Bryce Heem got away with an absolute interest. I don't want to spend too much longer. I don't want to spend like the next 20 minutes on referee, but Bryce Heem, look, he makes contact with the player in the air who lands on his head neck area. So your starting point's got to be red. You then go, they're like, oh, look, the commentators really had a shocker tonight. The commentators were awful around refereeing decisions. They're like, oh, he's looking up in the air, so it's not like it's not done deliberate. It's like, that's not anything to do with the laws. That's irrelevant, okay, whether he's looking up or not. He gets in a bit of a tangle with Nariki, but he makes as much of that trying to get Nariki out of the way so he can get to the point as Nariki does on him. Now, you can downgrade it one level to yellow, maybe if you say for interference, but downgrading it twice, I don't understand where that second downgrade came from. It was at very least a yellow. Quite how he got talked out of the card shocked me on that one.
Ferrari red. Dead set Ferrari red.
Where do you start on that? I mean, there was a great point, and I've forgotten who said it on Twitter, but there was a comment saying the only mitigating factor for him not being contacted was the obstruction by Nareki. So if Nareki had obstructed him, then Nareki should have been penalised, which he wasn't. So, and therefore, that was fully Heem's fault. I mean, that was horrific. That was neck. I think you look at that and you go, even I would, I don't care what colour shirt you're wearing. That was that's on your neck. That was harsh. That was really, really like a sickening fall to be right on his head like that after going up. So I don't care who's done that. I don't care if he's been nudged or pushed or whatever, but there was no care whatsoever for Mitch Hunt. He just got absolutely decked, and that was that was at least a very, very redly tinged orange for me. That was a horrific tackle, and another turning point in the game. But the first half, the ref had an absolute nightmare. That first half we should just discard that first half from this match. So on the records, it's just we'll start at whatever the score was, and we'll just pretend it didn't happen because it was a shocker. Okay. So Bo was shaking his head as well and said, "Yeah, it should be again red card." We've also got missed forward pass. We also had another one where the Highlander catches the ball in the air, takes 2 steps, gets wrapped up and held up. Referee calls a blue scrum, and then Aaron Smith comes in and goes straight from the kick ref. And the ref goes, "Oh yes, so it is," and reverses the scrum. So it's kind of like, yeah, look, there were probably about 4 or 5 decisions in this game that he reversed.
the call. Now, if you see 1 or 2 in a game, it's that's exceptional. See 5, wow! You kind of like look. This was a very, and I think that then flows over onto the players, onto the fans, that he's not in control of the game. He looks tentative, even if he is making the right calls. And some of those reversed calls were correct. Some of them weren't. But unfortunately, that was that was a problem. Yeah, it doesn't help when the commentators don't understand the laws, and things like the Lenchies one, where Lenchies goes in to get the ball, and the referee goes, no, there's been no release, and that's allowed 20 to get on the ball. And I was like, everyone's talking about he's penalised Lenchies for no release. No, he hasn't. He's penalised Aaron Smith, who's lying on the ground with his arms all around the ball, and that's why it's been reversed. But at that point, and so the commentators, I say, had a shocking night tonight with the call. The referees didn't have a good one, but it was exacerbated by the commentators. Go on.
Look, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but this whole refereeing thing has, this about 20 years ago, the Harvard Business Review came out with a paper called Skilled Incompetence. Let me say it again, skilled incompetence. So what we saw with that TMO and that whole Jonah Nareki and Bryce Heem, dead set red, guys, under the laws. I am pleased that it wasn't the red, but under the rules, that's a Ferrari red. The reason is Nareki is entitled to hold his line. Bryce Heem went out of his way, crossed that path, and went on into Nareki, made contact, then made a very clumsy attempt in one of those cartoon episodes. You remember the Roadrunner and the Coyote makes a big mess and falls over. That's what it reminded me of. Okay, and rightly so. Conflict. You said zero. We talk about concussion, about head injuries. There was no concern to the victim in that case, which was Mitch Hunt. He was looking dazed as ever. But again, guys, look, the reality is, we had about 17 replays, I think, on that very particular issue. The TMO talked Mike Fraser out of issuing any sort of card. It's silly. This is the professional game. These guys make a living refereeing these games, and the question has to be asked. And to me, it seems like they've been wrapped in cotton wool. Now, imagine if a player or coach has a bad game. It's pretty swift. The axe will come and they get dropped. But for some reason, these referees who are professionals, they have a season full of bad games. But what happens? Then they get promoted to blow an international. So this nonsense needs to stop, and someone has to take some accountability. And for the sake of the game and for the fans, look, there are some really good referees at the lower tier. Give them a shot, because it surely can't get any worse.
Well,
one final thing.
Okay, go on.
One final thing, and it's kind of what Bo started on there, that really shocked me about that whole incident was the focus on the whole Heem and Nareki tangle, not the fact that the player had landed on his head, which I thought, the whole outcome is the determination of the result, the way that the player ends up getting hit in his head, landing on his neck, that sort of thing. When you go for high tackles, that's the thing that I always look at and go backwards from there. But this is all focused on that starting thing. I mean, why aren't they looking at the fact that he landed on his head? It's like, don't worry about what happened first. The poor chap's landed on his head. If he landed on his back, okay, then it's not so bad. But boy, there was no real look at that whatsoever. It was all pre that and all the little tangle up. So that really shocked me, and I thought that was pretty poor on for the player safety whole thing that's targeting. There was no look at Mitch Hunt whatsoever. Did he even go off for an HIA? I don't think he did.
Not on that one, no.
No. He landed on his head over a player from 1 he's tall.
What HIA?
2 meters? Jeez.
I mean, we did see a couple of HIAs in this one, but yeah. And look, I mean, I'll disagree about the refereeing. Look, these are, I think, technically the best referees around. I think and which obviously, and if we get rid of them, what we're going to get just less experience, not as good as referees. But that's, as I say, we'll disagree on the opinion there. Someone here says, yeah, what we need is Google and Apple to create an artificial intelligence referee that can do it for us instead, and call it from the cameras. It's probably not a bad idea, Simon, on that one. But anyway, the commentators also mentioned, I've gone blank now as to one of the things they've said. Oh, geez. Never mind. But the commentators again didn't help themselves. Didn't help people's understanding of the laws around a bunch of these things. So we end up being 13-6 at half time. Should have been 10-6 because of the forward pass. But anyway, that's how it was. As you say, Steve, a better second half. But some and also 48 minutes they started going to the subs bench. We had Dixon going off, Hodgman, De Groot was gone, Parkinson went off for HIA. So that was really early for subs. I guess showing the sort of the toll that's been taken on these players at the end of the season.
I guess when you look at this from probably both teams' perspective, is the game plan was built on very strong benches and the impact they can have off them as well. So I guess the game plan was probably predetermined for a lot of these guys. I mean, both sides would have looked at the impact they can have, and you don't want guys staying on too long, especially the Highlanders' perspective. They were doing a lot of defence. Their game plan was built around throwing the ball down the other end and saying, you guys make an error, we'll take 3 and go from there. We're just going to tackle ourselves to a standstill, which the Highlanders do very, very well, and they did. So I guess it seemed predetermined. It seems like what they're going to do. The Blues probably surprised me a bit more. They went to the similar sort of story. But, both teams, strong benches and using that to their advantage, not saving guys, for 10 minutes apart from who was it? The hooker for the Blues. I've forgotten his name. He used to play for the Highlanders, Kerry Eklund. He went off at about the 80th minute and 10th second, and come on for one line out the end, and then got to celebrate. Strength off the bench. The team's very, very good, both of them.
And look, initially, the Blues came out and were doing well in that second half. We had Terry Black actually missing a penalty, which was a regulation one as well, but. I put a tweet out at that point saying, look, his kick wasn't what was going to lose this game. What was losing this game was the fact that the Blues made 6 clean breaks at that point, and none by the Highlanders, and hadn't finished any. And then when the benches came off, the Highlanders bench did better than the Blues bench on the whole. And that sort of swing. Now, again, the commentators going, I think and some tweets, the Blues are bottling it, they're choking. No, they weren't. We had changes, and they just weren't. The benches wasn't performing in the same way the Highlanders bench was. As you say, it shored up the scrum, which was a mess before then. For the next sort of 10 minutes, suddenly 3 back-to-back penalties, and a game that's looking comfortably a win for the Blues suddenly becomes a 2-point lead for the Highlanders. And a lot of us were very nervous, and my $3 was on the line at that point. Bowie, you were nervous at that point. Actually, I know you were, because you put in our Facebook chat that the Blues were playing awful at that point. I'm editing the swear words out of that bit.
I was very nervous too. And look, one thing I have to say with the substitutions, particularly around Patrick Tilpoloto and Nepo Lalala, that's high performance and the All Blacks effect. Obviously, those two guys, minutes are being managed, particularly in the front row. As you know, we've got a few injury issues, so you do kind of get nervous. But all that, believe it or not, guys, contractually managed, squad managing minutes. The key stat, as you rightly stated, Paul, was indeed those clean breaks. I mean, the Highlanders, they were playing a very good territorial game. Mitch Hunt's cross kick, particularly, they were really controlling it, but they couldn't really make that initial bust first up tackle, and that's what eventually came to hurt them. Blues did look a little bit in disarray, but that's purely because, they were playing a very robotic game plan and trying to go back to that 1-3-3-1 attacking pattern. And again, once it wasn't working, they just tried to do that even harder, and then the problem got worse. But the defining fact, as you rightly said, it was the tackle bust, those clean breaks. Had the Highlanders actually, in a couple of instances, make a couple of clean breaks, it would have been a very different story. So eventually, that is what came to bite them in the back.
Yeah. Now, one of the players that has had a lot of flack by the fan. Actually, no, I'm going to go back actually and look at some Gavin's comment in the live chat. How many Blues? No, that's not the one he was looking at. But he was talking about the number of. Can you explain the rule with penalties in a row? Usually, if teams give penalties after penalty, get a warning or yellow. Blues got nothing. Now, yes, the Blues gave a bunch of penalties there, but they generally weren't in their 22. They were mainly a distance out, and you generally get referees only give warnings if you give multiple penalties, really in your 22. At the end of the day, the Blues gave 11 penalties to the Highlanders 9. Looks pretty average, nothing exceptionally bad there, but there was a spate of them at one point by the Blues, which is what I say led to that lead by the Highlanders. But that's why there wasn't a warning in there. It's because they weren't down close to the try line. Perhaps the man of the moment and the difference between the two games was a player that doesn't get much love, let's be honest, and has been ridiculed as a Blues player. But Harry Plummer, a man who came on who guided Auckland to an overtime victory over Canterbury a couple of years ago, comes on in another final and knocks over his 2 penalties, giving the Blues a 1-point lead. And he probably won't get celebrated, but a player who perhaps has answered or stuck his finger up at a couple of critics there.
Bowie, you love him. Where you go? I've got a point further back than this. I'm no fan of Harry Plummer, and those 2 kicks aren't going to change my mind about that. Although I will say that first one was a very, very, and I even put on the chat, a sweetly struck. It looked so juicy how it just perfectly purred over. I really enjoyed that kick from any perspective, but I'm going to chip in a bit further back about the Highlanders. So I'll let Boa go on all his cheesiness about Mr. Plummer.
Well, in all my cheesiness, I have to say it looked very Joel Stransky like that kick. It had height, it had swagger, and it was a peach of a kick. It was straight over the dead center. Look, I guess the reason why Harry takes a lot of flack is, when you play for Auckland, and particularly at first fight, you expect someone to be a bit of a flash Harry, someone who has a bit of swagger, who can really pull out a bag of tricks. Harry's the complete opposite. He's your tradesman, workhorse, blue collar, sort of, do the hard stuff, play that sort of almost Northern Hemisphere like game. So that's probably the reason. But how ironic, he comes in, he kicks 2, takes 2 shots at goal, and I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Harry Plummer either, but the game, the final, how it kind of evolved into that whole tight arm wrestle, that's exactly the type of player you actually wanted to come on the park, particularly in the last 15 to 20 minutes, settle everything down and get the points on the board. Because, guys, from a coaching point of view, particularly in a final, you got to play the clock. You got to play the board. So whenever you get points, you take the points. And clearly the Highlanders, taking all those shots at goal, they stayed in the fight. They went into the lead. They stayed in the fight. Had things been a little bit more different in the tackle bust area, again, different story. So, you gotta kind of give Harry Plummer a little bit of love today, and hopefully he'll be getting some at the after-match function.
Because he ain't going to be playing in any higher honours, is he?
So
he can celebrate all he likes.
I'm not suggesting he should be an All Black by any stretch of imagination. No, but he'll be back to Auckland for another NPC campaign. I might try and get an interview with him and ask him about how this went. The
after party. I'm sure he'll have a lot of success.
That's why he's a plumber, says Simon Hughes. Yes, nice one. Anyway, sorry, Stephen. I'm going to hand back to you then for your comment about Highlanders. You wanted to go back onto that.
I'll do my best Ashwin and beep up the truck, reverse the truck up a bit and do some beeping. Shall we go back before took over? No, two things. The first one's a short one. Who needs Geordie Barrett when you got Josh Ioane? We'll take that from halfway. Thanks very much. You can't leave that out of it, a 50-metre smacker. So certainly don't forget about him and what he's got in his locker as well. But before that kick, the penalty they took, Mitch Hunt, that put them, be within the 1 point. I think at that stage, that's when they should have gone for the corner, because at that stage, just for that penalty, or even from that got them that penalty, they just absolutely destroyed the Blues in a rolling maul and took about 15 metres upfield. Absolutely just caned it. That momentum, back to the corner, that maul has not worked hardly all year long, and it just, those subs coming on, changing the momentum, changing that game, changed everything. They had to build on that. The 3 was good. Yes, it got them close, and ultimately you'd look and say, hey, they got the lead from that. But boy, if they could have snuck on 7 from that, it would have been a little bit different, wouldn't it? They would have been in that lead a little bit earlier, a little bit sooner, and built a bit more confidence too from that try, and an aspect of the game that they do quite highly regard to their maul, knowing that works now. They could have changed the whole game plan, because you didn't see them. Well, they didn't get the chance, to be fair, to go back to it. But I thought they should have built on that and gone back to that maul, kicked 5-10 out. Hunt put them in the corner, and just, Ash Dixon, 100 games, try, lead. Could have been different.
Good point there. Sorry, Ash Dixon, congratulations. 100 games for the Highlanders, on top of his Super Rugby games for the Hurricanes as well. So he did say sort of midweek that 100 Super Rugby games didn't feel kind of right, but now 100 games for one team, that feels right. So good to see. Congratulations to him on that one. Yeah, no, you're right, Kiri. I was thinking that, Josh Ioane and Harry Plummer, 2 guys who don't get much kicking practice, suddenly asked in the half final, here you go, boys, off you go, knock over these not easy kicks. And boy, they both step up and they both do it fantastic, which is great to see. Looking forward to seeing Josh playing for the Maori All Blacks as well in their games this July. Then Nocturnal Rights asks us, what's the rule regarding Josh Goodhue coming off and Patrick Tuipulotu coming back on? Now, I think this is because it's HIA, but Boa, can you explain around that one?
Yes, absolutely. It's around the HIA, but again, it's there's not enough clarity around this, because this whole HIA thing has been really badly managed right throughout. I'd say as far as the last sort of 3-4 seasons, even in Test rugby. So I just think that there needs to be a little bit more clarity, particularly this is something the commentary team can be educated a little bit more on when such a thing happens. So and this is why this question keeps coming up. Oh, was it legit? Was it absolutely? It was. Wherever there is head knock, or that's what we call it in rugby, head knocks. It's actually called a traumatic brain injury, or the potential to have one of those. Then there is the allowance to have that substitution. So that is the reason why Tuipulotu and that whole Joshua Goodhue, and that looked quite nasty thankfully the medical staff took all the time to assess Joshua, and hopefully he's going to be better off for it.
I can't help but just laugh at Nocturnal's last comment there and agree with it completely.
Josh Goodhue keeps his brains in his ribcage, I see.
He got absolutely smashed in a ruck. That's what that whole injury hold-up was from. It was actually his ribs. So was it even HIA? I don't think it was. It was a rib injury. Well, he was injured. It wasn't HIA.
You can get whiplash, and therefore you can still get head injuries from that. So, but no, he did go off for HIA, even though
really?
He may have been. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Garbage.
Yeah, it's end of the day, guys. It's what the medical staff say, and I can see why a lot of people are questioning this, but that's because there's been this whole feeling about the referees making up the rules as they go. So hopefully this is not one of those instances. But as Paul rightly said, whiplash is it's what we call secondary. It's what we call a secondary smash, where you make initial contact, and then as you fall back, your head or the back of the neck can actually make contact with the ground. That's not a very pleasant thing, and we're actually seeing there's been a lot of research done around this, and this is a very common and now critical factor as to why some of these professional players struggle with post-game concussion. So I think the right call was made. But again, there's got to be a little bit more awareness. Particularly the commentators need to be schooled in this particular aspect of the game.
Now, I guess, and one of the problems is, so I'm just going to drop a name here. So I was chatting to Wayne Smith on Thursday evening about, and one of the things we were discussing was around reducing of the number of substitutions you're allowed. You're allowed and to allow like two or three tactical substitutions, and all the other substitutions have to be injury related. I'll say, yeah, look, you can't do that because people will just cheat basically and lie about injuries. And I guess that's the problem with this one. Again, is when people say, yeah, look, oh, he's grazing his ribcage, because we're so used to now, basically, after seeing, we saw the Chiefs do it a few years back with with Rennie. We've seen France do it. We had Bloodgate over in the UK. We know that teams. We've seen too many coaches basically try and cheat the rules to get players on and off. So that, yeah, it's a shame, and so that will have to be monitored going forward.
Look, Paul and Stovik, there's a very simple fix to this. Now, in unarmed sport combat, particularly mixed martial arts, they have a cage side or ringside doctor all time. So in rugby, we need a roving medical officer who's independent of both teams, who is neither physio or doctor for that respective team. Soon as there is some issue, there's enough funding and the technology and personnel are there in the professional game. And given that there's a lot of talk about trying to make the game safe, concussion and head knocks, you have a roving medical officer, and soon as there is something like this, that person is the first to attend, and they will make a very clear professional judgment. So if someone's faking it, very easy to find out. It's pretty simple.
Well, I think it's a bit harder than that to find out. I think look at how many times prop forwards in particular take a knee before a scrum, just so everyone gets a breather. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. They just all want to breathe before the scrum, and they just fake an injury for that. But anyway, I think it's a nest of vipers. But I do agree we need less substitutions, not more, because we're not getting players who are tired and creating space later in the game, which is what we need. Finally, we obviously had a Patrick Tuipulotu then played a key part in clearing out the ruck that allowed Satutu to make his break. And as you said, Boa, Ruru got there quickly and cleared the ball quickly, something that Sam Christie hadn't done in the previous 6 clean breaks that the Blues had. And we saw Gibson smashing over to take a 23-15 lead with only 2 minutes left. Now, the Highlanders did press after that, try to drop goal, but it all felt like time was running out for them, unfortunately for them. But Satutu making a key contribution there.
No question. I thought, for me, Satutu was one of the players of the game. I mean, if you look at his work rate, he was pretty much all over, and particularly in the close quarters, in those rucks, in the the 1-3-3-1 formations out wide. I think he had a couple of clean steals as well, straight over the top. We're starting to see his star qualities come through. And yeah, that particularly that last distribution from Ruru, that to me was a defining point, because right up till that point, with no disrespect to Christie, things are pretty slow, and the Highlanders defense are pretty much straight on that first receiver, whereas that pass was crisp. It was dominant, and what I liked about Ruru was he was going searching for work. He didn't actually step back and wait for it. So that was ultimately the difference. Hoskins, barnstorming game, and for me, one of the players of the day today.
Yep. I'm kind of worried about what happened at that last ruck there too. From Highlanders' perspective, it really was a bit of a shambles. They have one guy pretty much sitting there, Aaron Smith setting up to clear or whatever he was trying to do. It was all a bit messy, and they turned the ball over, and it was just completely disjointed. It was quick from the Blues, but the Highlanders certainly, that was a bit of a brain fade. They just weren't in the zone as would be, I guess, from that point of view, and it just quickly fell apart for them.
And I think you say that's the Highlanders got caught out there about not having enough people at the ruck. A theme of this game was the Blues rucking or pushing the Highlanders off the ball. So there you are, 76 minutes in, on the edge of your own 22, only one guy on the ball. No, sorry, that was bad game management. By then, you should have changed and said, right, guys, we need 2 to 3 players in there, not one, because we need to protect our ball better because we've been driven off it too often. And yeah, they didn't adapt to that style, that part of the play. Perhaps one of the few things the Highlanders didn't do quite right this evening. I mean, they did a lot of things right defensively and adapted very well, but that was one where they perhaps missed out.
I think the Highlanders have been guilty this season all year of playing out of their 22 a bit too risky, not looking after it enough. We've seen, I think it was Mitch Hunt went for a little bit of a run by himself, isolated away from his support, just trying some things, 1 or 2 phases too many. When they had that specific game plan right from the start, where it was obvious they were going to kick out of their half, that kind of fell away in that last 15 probably minutes where they started trying to do those little extra things, trying to force the game. And that's the sort of thing that when one phase goes wrong, like that one ruck turnover, and in that sort of tight game like that, 5 points, 7 points can completely, as it did, completely turn that game around. And the chances, I mean, it's a very low percentage play, isn't it? It's like, they always say about the chip and chase, low percentage to get the ball back. You don't make much ground. Rain ball out of your 22, the risk of going wide when you've only got backs, you don't need one forward. You don't need a Dane Coles hooker ranging out there. It's going to blow your winger off the ball very easily in that sort of instance, and it's very risky and can cost you big time like that, especially in a match like that.
And so when we're thinking about this, then there's always talk about players like Rieko Ioane, Talea, who scored the gut thing. Actually, one of the most important players for the Blues was Zon Sullivan, and the fact that he's got a howitzer or a boot on him, and he basically outkicked distance-wise rather than tactically wise. I think he can outkick everyone else on that pitch, and that was probably one of the things where the Blues came up trumps or gained the Blues some territory. Was that if you get in a kicking duel with him, he's kicking further than you are, and so I think the Highlanders perhaps lost territory a few times because of that.
Yeah, I think the Blues. Go for it.
I was going to say, look, Zan, no question, star in the making. College Rifles man really stepped up, playing NPC, now playing the Blues. It's only a matter of time when he gets drafted into high honors. But just coming back to that ruck, so yeah, absolutely right, Paul. Bad game management for the Highlanders, because when Christie was there, the Highlanders could actually get away by not contesting the breakdown. So we call zero ruck, where you don't actually contest the ruck, everyone fans out. But as soon as Ruru comes on, where he's faster, where he's got a much better clearance, speedy pass from the ruck, that's where you got to change up, and you actually need to get more numbers to the breakdown. So they tried the zero ruck, but the thing is, at this higher level, we're talking nanoseconds, milliseconds. But the transfer of the ball was that much faster, and that to me was the most decisive and game-changing breakdown or ruck for that entire minutes. Unfortunately, the Highlanders paid a very, very heavy price.
Yeah, you're talking about the one that after Tutu's run, I think we were discussing the one before that where Patrick Tuipulotu turned over the ball, and it's like, so yes, it was more the defence, also more the management of their own rucks. I think the Highlanders messed up, but yeah, you're quite right again. Also, changing how they defended rucks needed to alter as the scrum half altered as well.
That's coaching, guys, and this is what I do on a relatively weekly basis. Telling coaches these are the little things which end up between the W and the L, just minor little things.
The Nocturne says, yeah, maybe the Highlanders missed Frizzell's ball running. Yes, they probably did, but then again, the Blues also missed the engine that is Tom Robinson as well. Both sides have got injuries and players missing. So yeah, both it is what it is when it comes to this part of the season. So it finished 23-15, guys. Any final comments?
I'll find one thing to say. Can we get Eden Park relayed? Because I mean, compared to the beautiful ground that is Forsyth Bar Stadium, and clearly the Highlanders weren't prepared to play on this slippery, mud-ridden, backyard it is Eden Park. I mean, how many times they slip over? Nareki slipped over for clearing kick. Mitch Hunt slipped over on a conversion. Oh, it's terrible. I mean, why do we all just have covered in nice stadiums? It's time to get up for the times, Auckland. Move on. Come on.
No, hang on, no.
Get rid of this bike highway and build a stadium, eh? Come on.
The bike. Oh no, we're not going there. The funny thing is that they relayed the turf, and they totally stripped it off, sold the turf, and have relayed it last summer. This is a brand new pitch. It's the first time. It's the only time they've done it since I know, since I've been here in New Zealand. So it was a one in a sort of like decade, one in a 5-year kind of change they've done last summer to lay a new pitch, and you're complaining about it. Brilliant.
Right, on a serious note, that was just an observation. I found it quite funny how you don't often see players slip taking kicks and things like that unless it's like quite noticeably rain, which has seemed quite a nice. I don't know what it's like, but it seemed nice enough anyway. But hey, serious note, well played to the Blues. I mean, over the 80 minutes, got to say deserved winners. I think they played the better game throughout. I think they played to the law, or to the letter of the law of not getting stuck, not getting found out about things a little bit better. I think around the breakdown, one other thing through that match, holding players back, pushing players around, things like that. You see the Blues doing that a lot better, not getting called for it, not getting told for it, but getting away of slowing down, holding his players, getting around the rucks and the breakdowns a little bit better as well. So just little things like that can change a whole match up. And I think, the Blues just had that little bit more mongrel, I guess, about them, where the Highlanders just trying to be that little scraggy underdog like they always are, and they just about come away with the cookies. But good second half, absolutely garbage first half. I wish I never see again. But all in all, a fitting end to the tournament. Well done, the Blues. And next season, we'll be down under the roof in Dunedin, and I'll be able to go to the final instead. The Highlanders will lift the trophy next year.
Well, talking about the Blues.
Well, that's fitting, isn't it?
He's just losing with his final comment, unfortunately. We'll see if we get Burr back. So I think he's back. Go on, Burr, try again.
Yeah, well, sorry about that, guys. Technology failed me there. No, what I was saying was, the Blues got away with all these little niggly things. They certainly had the right set of officials on the park. So well done to the Blues. Play what's in front of you. And for me, the moment of the match was Mitch Hunt when he took that shot at goal where he slipped and fell. But you see the man's eyes was dead set on what he was doing. To me, that is the epitome of professionalism. Bravo, well done, absolutely nailed him. He could have snapped his neck for all we want, and he just held his composure, and that told me that as far as goal kicking, they've really done their homework. They've done the preparation, and from a coaching point of view, from a coach educator's point of view, that made me feel real good, because that is one part which is actually lacking in the New Zealand game, where we don't give the goal kicking department enough respect. So hopefully this is a precursor of what is to come in the test upcoming season. We see lots of tries, but at the same time, all these tries get converted, and we win by big margins. And we don't have to bite our fingernails and go, oh, are we going to be losing our $3 bets? So there you go. For me, the moment of the match, Mitch Hunt taking the shot at goal. I hope Sky can cut in ultra motion, put some, Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, whatever, into a little montage, and then roll it out on YouTube.
I thought it was quite nice to talk about how nice Harry Plummer's kick was, but Josh Ioane's kick from halfway. I mean, does he have immense self-confidence or something to kick with that style where he doesn't actually look at where he's kicking? Heads down for so much of that, from the point he hits it until it's pretty much going over the sticks. He just holds that pose of down. I mean, you don't see too many kickers do that, and it looks oddly satisfying to watch him do that and it go over the post. It's
Beautiful.
Just like, how the confidence and the mental aspect of that part of his game is astounding. But awesome. That was nice to see as well. Good. I don't know why he's not the proper kicker, to be fair. I do like a bit of Josh Ioane.
Well, that whole sort of concentration with Josh Ioane, head down, looking at the sweet spot, kind of that slow motion trailer from the Baywatch, the Baywatch trailer where Pamela Anderson going slow motion. That's what it reminds you of. In a rugby sort of way.
each to their own with visualization of kicking. But there you go. So yes, congratulations to the Blues. 23-15, their first Super Rugby title in 18 years, but more importantly, their first title since Brisbane Tens, as we found out earlier in the show. A lot of people are saying, yes, look, they'll always go down as the first winners of Super Rugby Trans-Tasman. Well, you know what? It could also be the last. I'm not sure it will be called Super Rugby Trans-Tasman this year. So this may be the only year we get Super Rugby Trans-Tasman and we get it called something else. But we'll have to wait and see.
Isn't it?
A bit like the Tens, yes. One of those pub quizzes. Who is the Super Rugby Trans-Tasman? The current holders. A bit like who are the Five Nations champions currently?
Who was the only team to not make a grand final in 2021 from New Zealand? Sorry, Hurricanes.
That was savage, I have to say. Savage from the cornflake.
10 years time, you'll see it.
There we go. So, folks, thank you very much, everyone who's joined us in the live chat. It's been fun, and for joining us all the way through Super Rugby. We'll be back tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. with the Super Rugby, the round review, which obviously will be the Super Rugby final review, with myself and Ashwin and Stephen Harris. Ashwin and Stephen have been at the game, so we more talking about what it was like at the game and to really experience it in the flesh. We'll also, don't forget, with the NPC coming up, that we'll be getting round as many of those games as we can. Trying to persuade Cornflake to be our official Southland correspondent, but we'll see if he'll take up that mantle. And folks, hope you all are having a good weekend.